We're back. Welcome to Gameday Nation, presented by Renewal by Anderson. Yaw Bonsu alongside Rhett Boyd and Deon Thompson. We were off for a few weeks, but I feel like today was the right day to come back. The past week or so has been, let's keep it a buck, absolutely crazy, and that says something about post-January 1 basketball.
We had a lot of really good games over the Christmas break. You said this week was outstanding.
We'll get into all of it.
We'll get into all that too, but you got to understand a lot about pretenders versus contenders over the course of the last 2.5, 3 weeks.
And before the break, we saw teams that maybe didn't get as many games in, teams like St. Francis, but now that St. Francis has its legs under them, you saw it kind of dominate teams that we weren't expecting it to dominate earlier in the season.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Sometimes the early games can be a bit deceptive, okay, but towards this part of the year, you kind of know who your team is, and you kind of really have a good grasp on, as Rhett just said earlier, the contenders and the pretenders. But we're going to touch on that later. Y'all know what I said. Hey, we're going to cook on this, y'all. Stay tuned. Trust me.
And just to build on what Deon just said, as a coach, you kind of know who your team is at this point.
Yeah.
But even more important than that, the other teams now know who you are as well through playing you once, scouting. So that's where it's going to be a lot of fun the second time through, who makes those adjustments. And we've seen that already in a couple of teams that already played each other twice.
And we saw some games, like some surprise games, some surprise results that we might not have known at the beginning of the year, just like players. There's some players who we're going to talk about who we didn't really talk about at the beginning of the year. So I had opportunity over the break, as did Rhett, to see some games and to see some nice guys who we used to call complimentary, but they're stepping up to be guys.
You mentioned that you now know who your team is at this point in the season, but when you get into these rematches of these conference matchups, is it hard the second time around, whether you won or lost, to adjust and kind of go with what you know from the first matchup?
I really do think that if the teams are relatively even, okay, and the team that lost the first time around sometimes has a little bit more of an advantage, because if you're the team that won the game, what are you going to change?
Fantastic. We got a loaded list yet again on Gameday Nation. Let's take a look at the games that you will see tonight on GDN. It's highlighted by our Game of the Week, Anthony Wayne and Whitmer. Of course, Whitmer, the last time we saw the Panthers on Gameday Nation, it was a triple overtime barn burner of a win over Northview, a Game of the Year candidate. You might hear it come up again come BCSN honors in June. And as for Anthony Wayne, getting back some players, getting more healthy, you can kind of see the Generals, maybe not at the level of a Perrysburg just yet, but you can see the Generals making a push towards being a number 2 or 3 team in the NLL Buckeye division.
Yeah, and the thing with them, like you say, they did bring Zane Kutza back, who was a big piece, by the way, and they score roughly 54 points a game, so they're right in there, even with most of the NLL teams. I think this NLL race could shape up to be pretty decent. Anthony Wayne has always, I think they're pretty deep. When we look at depth of teams, I think they may be one of the deeper teams in the NLL.
Welcome back. We had some mic issues, but honestly, it came at a great time. You don't want to hear Deon talking about how he just became an Indiana fan this year. Is that right, Deon?
Yes, come on. Everybody who knows me, I had to mention this, especially my coworkers. I'm always wearing IU stuff. I've worn it I wear OSU stuff too, obviously, because my son was fortunate enough to play at both schools. But hey, this is a monumental year for IU. You know what I mean? It's a great year. They're winning right now. But stay tuned to us, though. Don't go over there.
But let me ask you, Big Ten title game, were you rooting for OSU or IU?
IU. So I asked my son, I said, hey, who should I root for? He said, Dad, where'd I get the degree from? IU, all right, let's go with it.
Say no more. Say no more. We love degrees around here. But back to the basketball now.
Yeah.
Anthony Wayne and Whitmer. Coach talked about it, wants to see more dominance inside the paint. I'm curious what you think about that, Deon.
No, I'm going to agree 100% with what Rhett said, because if you watch what Anthony Wayne's been doing, they've been attacking the paint and getting some good looks. And they've also been doing it defensively by playing that little three-quarter court. It's kind of a soft press, but it will force turnovers at time. And then on the other end, Whitmer's just getting one shot, typically a long three. And, they're not offensive rebounding as well. So I think it's reflective of the score of this game.
One thing I'm curious about when it comes to Alan Horton, you heard him say that he wants to extend his game to be more of a shooter. How much of that do you think is needed from him versus just a product of the state of basketball right now?
No, it's definitely needed, especially in the era of basketball we're in. He's probably going to have to develop a little bit more of an outside shot. But if you notice, he's been dribbling the ball up and down the court.
It's dangerous for a guy his size.
And it is. And the thing is, people don't understand this. You saw the graphic with his mom. She's a twin sister, Kim and Karen Sokolsky. I went to high school with them. They were in the Hall of Fame at the University of Toledo. So he comes from a basketball family. And his cousin, Jackie Harris, who we used to cover here a lot. So he was the baby of the group. He had a little brother that played. And there's something about those babies that get really good. But Coach Kaczmarek did a great job of really working with him when he was younger. You know, he has great footwork. We all know this, and it's no secret. Coaches will tell you, the game plan is to stop Alan Horton from getting the basketball. And if you stop him, which no one has been able to do this year, he really came on, in my opinion, at the end of last year, and just now he's a senior. He's playing really well.
Yeah, and I think he's done a good job from end of his junior year to his senior year. He's worked on his body. He's gotten stronger for sure. And as a result of that, he's been more physical this year. And you've seen the evolution of his game, you know, because of that. And, you know, he's at a high ceiling. He's a bright kid, excellent feet, like you said. And you know, we love watching him and look forward to see what he continues to do next year beyond high school.
St. Francis, a 59-45 win over UD Jesuit tonight. Alan Horton, 25 points in the win. You're watching Gameday Nation, presented by Renewal by Anderson, a better way to a better window. We got some debate on the other side of the break. Welcome back to Gameday Nation. Yaw Bonsu with you alongside Rhett Boyd and Deion Thompson. So at the beginning of the show, we mentioned how today was the perfect week to come back because so much has happened over the past 7 days or so, and that includes the Catholic League. So we want to show you a graphic here. It is the Catholic League records among the top 6 teams coming into tonight. So starting with Central Catholic, best win over St. John's, railed the Titans, 5-2 record coming into today. St. Francis also beating St. John's, avenging that early season loss, also 5-2. Meanwhile, you have St. John's 8-3, more legs under it than any other team here. Key win early season over St. Francis, and then you have Brother Rice, Detroit Catholic Central, and of course UD Jesuit. So I'm going to toss up the question. Deion, we'll start with you. Who is the best team in the Catholic League right now?
I think looking at the graphic, I would go in that order, with the I'm going with Central Catholic.
Okay.
I think they've clearly proven they're the best team right now. But I like St. Francis and St. John's as 2A, 2B. I think you know, we saw tonight what happened. But I'm going to go with Central Catholic, and you know the way they're playing right now. Hey, Rhett, what do you think?
No, I agree with you because not only did Central Catholic beat St. John's, and by the way, that game they handily beat St. John's.
Destroyed, yes.
And it was, I mean, they got on them early. St. John's did make a run in that game, got at the 4 late before Central Catholic pushed it to a double-digit victory. But they were convincing in that ball game. And remember, they also beat Brother Rice.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And Brother Rice,
Brother
Rice came in highly touted. A lot of people thought they were picked to win the league. So they got 2 key wins, beating Brother Rice and St. John's. I like Central Catholic. You thought with the loss of Isaiah Mack Russell, this team would take a step back a little bit, but it's been the opposite. They've taken a step forward. And a lot of it has to do with, obviously, Manny Johnson now being a senior, bigger, stronger, continuing to do what Manny Johnson does. But for me, Caden Kennard's been the guy who's really elevated his game in the absence of Isaiah Mack Russell, and they just haven't missed a beat.
Caden Kennard and the gentleman we're seeing right there, Langford. Langford has been a pleasant surprise for me. I didn't know much about him coming into the season. He's made a really good transition, knocking down jump shots, and you see Caden Kennard right there. You talk about guys who spent time in the weight room after the season. It was Caden.
You know what? And just look at the graphic of those teams again. I really think it's an eyelash. Really, even with Central in the top spot that Deion and I both think is the case, it's an eyelash. The margin of difference between a Central, Brother Rice, any of those teams you saw on the screen, except for maybe UDJ. Mm-hmm. Because when you look at it, like already, St. John's beat St. Francis. St. Francis came back and beat St. John's. Central beat St. John's. And then Central still plays St. Francis twice, coming up next week being the first round matchup. But Detroit Catholic Central beat Central Catholic. So you can't count them out either.
So let me ask you this, and I know because Justin and I, we touched on it a little bit, but I didn't really get to cook like I needed to.
The floor is yours.
Right now. So if you take Horton off of St. Francis, you take Race Kowalczyk off St. John's, how good are they? That's the equivalent of losing Isaiah Mack Russell.
I agree.
Who's averaging like 21 plus a game where he is right now. So you took one of the top players in Ohio. He's one of the top 2 guys last year, and they're still doing what they do. Credit to Coach Mike Floyd.
Yes.
He figured out how to galvanize the troops. Those guys are playing together as a unit. And even when the Lima Senior game, people are going to say, oh, they lost that game. They were up for 3 quarters and 2 minutes in that game in the fourth, and they end up losing at the end. So you tell me who's done a better job with less.
No, I agree. That's why we got them in the top spot. That's why we think you're in the top spot.
But why did it take you guys so long to catch on to Central Catholic? Of course, losing IMAC, of course, was a huge loss, but it seems like we're getting on the Central Catholic train a bit late compared to what we thought of maybe a St. John's or St. Francis earlier.
Because when you lose a double-double,
Yes.
you don't know what you have.
Yeah.
And you didn't know that Caden Kennard was going to go from here to here this year, consistently in the biggest games. Manny's being Manny, but you said Langford.
Brothers.
Yeah, Carruthers.
The complimentary guys.
And don't sleep on Carruthers and his value to this team. He might only get 4-6 points a game, but he's getting 8, 10, 12 rebounds a game, keeping possessions alive, giving your team extra possessions, and rebounding, keeping opponents to one shot and one shot only on the defensive end.
And he's an eraser. I watched him the other night. He had 15 points the first quarter. But the way he changes shots when you go inside, I mean, there's not a better guy you're going to see. 6'7", very long, maybe 7-foot wingspan. He does so much for that team. And we're forgetting, Dre Wardrop hasn't been there.
Yeah.
Wait till he comes back. That's a guy that can average 9 to 11 points a game. So they're going to be strong going forward. But to your point, we didn't see it coming because it's like when you lose one of the top players in Ohio.
Naturally, you're going to think you're going to regress.
Yes.
But Central Catholic doesn't seem to have done that. But I want to touch on St. John's as well, because we haven't talked about St. John's. If you're the Titans, you get blown out by Central Catholic. Of course, you have the win over St. Francis, but the Knights only played 2 games when that game took place. So if you're the Titans right now, if you're Race Kowalczyk, if you're Ethan James, why should you believe you're going to come out on top of the Catholic League this year?
Well, and I'm going to go back to the St. Francis game. They were down by as much, I think it's 16 or 17. Came back and almost won that game in the pit. And whenever you have a guy, like you say, Race Kowalczyk, you got, Ethan James, those guys, they're a good team. They're very solid, well coached, and they usually play their best ball the second half of the year.
And I agree with everything. They are talented. They got a go-to guy that gets you 20 plus. Ethan James emerged in the scoring in his scoring this year, point guard, quickness. My concern with St. John's right now in this 3-week stretch that they've had lately is in the Central Catholic game, you got flat out outplayed. You got out effort in that game, and you were down double digits on 2 different occasions. You go to the St. Francis game, a game that you won handily on your home floor early in the year. You played hard. We said that way. They outplayed St. Francis from an effort standpoint.
And we had it here on Gameday Nation.
In a physicality standpoint. You come back a couple weeks later in the pit, they're down double digits again before they make that run. So right now, for St. John's, it's not about what you can do. It's about what you're currently doing. You're too rocky right now in the ebbs and flows of a basketball game. It's too many highs, too many lows. They got to even that out. So when you make your run, great. But then when you give up a run, you're not going here. You're able to maintain it, absorb it a little bit, and then you can make your run again. Because right now they're just getting beat with too many big runs right now in games, and it's just too much to overcome. So are they capable? Absolutely, they're capable. But they got to iron out some things.
I was going to say, but St. Francis, because I'm pretty sure
that's where I was going to go.
next.
Because Central Catholic has been consistent. St. John's, kind of a rocky start. You have a St. Francis team that has had guys that have been sick, kind of haven't played as many games earlier in the year, but now the Knights seem to be catching their stride as much as anybody in the area. So where does St. Francis lie for you?
I think they're just as good as any other teams we talked about, because initially my concern with St. Francis, they didn't have a point guard, a true point guard. They got good guards, obviously, when you talk about Polanitz, and the other kid, Hornby.
He's back.
Very, very good guards. I mean, Poland is a Division I recruit. But, to me, when I watched them, they struggle getting into their sets. Now they figured it out. Credit to Coach Kaczmarek. They have size. Trayshawn Chenault, he's doing an outstanding job. They're the biggest team in our area. They play that zone. They're figuring it out. So they have an opportunity, but my concern with them is giving up the leads. When you go up 17, hey, we're watching Indiana right now. They go up 14, they end up going up 35. That's the type of team that you have to be going forward, because they're going to have a tough way to go once the sectionals and districts start. They're Division II, I believe, right? So they get an opportunity. They're going to see some guys. So they have to get that figured out.
Well, Central and St. John's are going to see each other in the tournament.
That's going to be tough.
St. Francis, Central's Division III.
Yeah.
So in the tournament. So, so what are we saying after we go through all? What are we saying? We're saying that Central Catholic, St. John's, St. Francis, 3 of our teams here in the city of Toledo in the Catholic League, who the last couple of years have been at the bottom of the Catholic League, all 3 of them are in the top 4 right now with a chance to win it. And don't forget about DCC, though, because DCC knocked off Central earlier in the year, and Brother Rice is as good as anybody, too. Central knocked them off. We'll see how St. John's and St. Francis handled them when they play. It's an eyelash difference between these teams.
Yeah,
it's matter who's hot that night. It's who's hot at the time, maybe in a 2-week sequence that we keep doing this with these teams. And it's not that we're non-committal, it's just the facts. And we're here to tell you the facts, and that's what they are.
And it's about time we're showing some love. We always show love, but I feel Northwest Ohio in general, we don't get the love we deserve. Football, basketball, now, and that Detroit Catholic League, we were struggling winning games just a few years ago. Now, like you said, we're at the top. We have very good teams. In my opinion, if they get on a good run, they may make it down.
So when we watch these teams continue to play, because they all have big-time games ahead of them. Central Catholic has St. Francis twice. They play Perrysburg. They play Margaretta, who's 1 loss, I think, right now. You got St. John's. They still play Central one more time. They got DCC, Brother Rice, St. Ed's. They're not in that league.
So all these teams are going to be tested.
They're all going to be tested. So we talk about our list being fluid. There's still a lot of chances for fluidity. But I think as we move forward too, and the X factors on these teams. Okay, scouting reports are going to say, take care of Caden Kennard and Manny Johnson. Take care of Alan Horton and Polinitz. Take care of Race Kowalczyk and Ethan James. But we've seen with Central Catholic, Langford has stepped up, right? For St. John's, Coy Hammock has had moments.
Yeah.
For St. Francis, Chenault had a big night the other night. Who are those X factors that are going to continue to develop under the radar a little bit that comes up big in those moments? We've seen it early. We're going to continue to see it. Whoever does it best is going to find themselves on top of that, of one of the best leagues in the Midwest.
Yeah. Check back in with us in a month. I guarantee the list will be different. What a discussion. Thank you guys very much. You're watching Game Day. Well, we're not done. We got more on the other side of the break. We have more top teams beyond the Catholic League. You're watching Game Day Nation presented by Renewal by Anderson. A better way to a better window. Don't touch that dial. Come on now. And one more team I want to touch on that was in both of your top 10s is Perrysburg. Perrysburg, you said it, Coach Boyd. The Yellow Jackets don't necessarily have a signature win, but at 7-2, Perrysburg is winning the games that it's supposed to win. As we wind down the tournament time here in a month or so, what are you looking for from Perrysburg to convince you that it can break into potentially your top 5 teams?
Well, they're going to have an opportunity to prove themselves. They play Central Catholic here coming up. Before the end of the regular season. They play Anthony Wayne again. So we'll see how they handle those opportunities. So we'll see. They got 2 losses on the year. Hilliard Darby got them pretty good, and then they lost a tight one to Bishop Watterson. So the 2 teams they lost to, they have a 17-2 record. So again, they're deep, they're complete. And they're just going to keep the machine rolling.
Hey, shouts out to Coach Chris Stein. This is his first year.
Yep.
He's a new veteran. If you want to say, but he's doing a great job with these guys. Those kids seem to be having a lot of fun, and they're playing hard as well too for him.
Can we just lift the interim tag from him? I mean, come on,
man. Stop playing.
He's been in there long enough. He's proved himself, and again,
the man out there cooking, as I like to say. Don't give it up for him,
The Yellow Jackets dominating Findlay tonight. Perrysburg moving to 8-2. And of course, you guys had similar top 8s, but as we move into next week, it's going to be another loaded slate. What are you looking for from any of your top 8 teams to either keep their spot at the top or potentially move up? Let's keep it quick, Coach.
We always say the list is very fluid, so next week it could change.
Southview Clay, I'm interested to see how Clay handles that one in a big game in the Cardinal Division.
Fantastic. There was so much action in high school and college tonight. We'll have highlights on Game Day Nation Overtime coming up, following us, hosted by Mark Kuntz. But of course, you guys did a great job as always. For Rhett Boyd and Deion Thompson, I'm Yaw Bonsu. Another Game Day Nation Overtime in the books. We're here through tournament time. We'll see you guys next week.